Now let's say you want to change the layout. So in this example, we're going to change it to template.html, which I've already done. So that's in the rendered template method that's called within hello. So this is going to now change the kind of layout that we want. So if we go ahead and make that change, we should be able to dynamically change things without actually relaunching our website. So if we press return, for instance, you'll see now that our website looks different, basically because it's using a different layout. So now it has the image once again and the name of the department. That's basically the data. And you can see we've created this kind of hierarchy. So let's say we're creating a kind of department hierarchy of people. Or department hierarchy, I guess, lead departments and sub-secondary departments. This would be an example of how. So that's what the web page actually looks like if we run that. We just simply press return as we change the name, the template that we were referencing. So the important thing is to actually look at the template rather than the code in this example. Nothing is really different in the code in this case. The only code differences are going to be found in the template itself. So the template.html is mostly, it's going to have some HTML, so you can see the header again, and some basic information about the HTML layouts, the background color, and those kinds of things. But the script tag is going to reference the JavaScript. So this is using JavaScript. Within JavaScript, you can grab data, and the data is where you're going to get the JSON information. So if you look down here, you have something called var JSON data. This allows us to access that data that came in. If you recall, we sent the data in the main module. So we had this dump data equals JSON dumps, and then dump the list. So this dumps method essentially takes a list of information that you pass along. So all you have to do in JSON within Jinja and Flask is you basically pass it this kind of list of information, and so this list is then accessed here using JavaScript. So you get a data JSON data list basically, and then you use basically JavaScript lingo to essentially put the data in different spaces. So in this case, the layout that we use in the JavaScript has this this tree that's created. It allows a sort of dynamic movement that you saw when you first loaded the web page. So that is done by the JavaScript. So you can find all this code on various websites. I don't need to sort of demonstrate that here since JavaScript is not the main focus, but rather it's something you can find basically almost anywhere. JavaScript is quite ubiquitous and common for web pages, and you can find lots of open code out there. But for our example, what's more important is actually how the data is passed. So in this case, you have to access it like a list. So you reference it as a number, a location. So if I want sort of name information, so the name of the department, and then also the actual image, then those are the two data sources I pass. So the name and then the source. So name being department, and then the source being the image in this case. So those things are passed. And the referencing you see static images is nothing more than a reference to the actual folder tree that I have within the web application. So static images, and then the name of the image itself. So in this case, it's the same image every single time, but of course I could put different images potentially. I don't need to pass the same image, but I'm doing it in this example to show you how you would do it in general. So what you do basically is grab data from a list, in this case, name of the department, and the actual image, and you pass that then to the JSON script, or excuse me, the JavaScript, which is then essentially you're accessing the JSON data library or data list, and then it's passing to the JavaScript, which is then being applied as a way to dynamically update or be used in the web page. So you can see the script tag is a reference to the JavaScript within an HTML page. So it's basically an HTML page with a large chunk of JavaScript that you can see between the script tag. Most of it is related to sort of JavaScript or dynamics that are going on the web page. Again, not necessarily necessary, but just sort of to make the web page look a little nicer. The key part here, though, is where we access the data from the JSON. We have to use JSON within JavaScript, so that's the reason why we did that. So Jinja and Flask allow you to use JSON if you're going to use sort of data updates within JavaScript. So if you're just doing HTML, you can go ahead and use Flask and Jinja normally, like you would here in the first example in the layout.html. But in this example, because we're doing it within JavaScript, we essentially get it to JSON, or we use JSON to dynamically grab that data. And that's how a lot of web pages do it these days, is you essentially use JSON within JavaScript to make the pages more dynamic, more sort of nice looking, but also sort of useful for all kinds of dynamic or changes that might be happening to the web page as it's being used by users. So it makes the page more dynamic and user kind of interactive with different types of commands or inputs that users may apply. So that's the reason why people use JavaScript. But in our case, we're just simply trying to make it look a little nicer with the actual information that's being passed. So that's all that we have for today. And again, it's really quite simple. We just simply use our main module that's encapsulating a person object, and we create 6 of these person objects, which basically are nothing more than data holders. And then we have very simple code that then passes that information to the layouts. And most of the important parts that's actually happening is in the layout HTML templates. So whether it's the layout.html or template.html, both of these have different ways in which handling the data. Layout.html uses Jinja Flask natively, where it gets the person object in this case and various information about them. In the template.html, it uses the JSON data protocol basically to grab information as needed. So that's what we did basically today. So hopefully that you found that somewhat useful. Thank you.